Did you know that even though you look physically ordinary, you might actually have been born a prophet? I'm not talking about the gift of prophecy, which is available to every believer. I am talking about one who was born and designed by God to be a prophet, right from their mother's womb. In this video, I'm going to reveal 9 signs that show whether you were born a prophet or not. In Jeremiah chapter 1 verse 5, God says, "Before I formed thee in the belly I knew thee, and before thou camest forth out of the womb I sanctified thee, and I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations." This means some people are born as prophets, and others are not. Not everyone who calls themselves a prophet is actually a prophet. Some people think they are prophets simply because they do prophesy, and there's a big difference between having the gift of prophecy and actually being called to be a prophet. So, let's take a look at the 9 signs you are called to be a prophet. Sign 1. Your words consistently come to pass. One of the clearest evidence that you're operating in a prophet's office is that your words have a habit of consistently coming to pass. You might say something, even if just a casual comment or something you felt pushed by the Spirit to say, and then it actually happens, exactly like you said it would. This isn't just good intuition or lucky guessing. It's the creative power that comes with true prophetic words. The Bible tells us that Samuel's words were so accurate that God never let any of them fall to the ground. That's why he was known for being so accurate. In Deuteronomy chapter 18, verses 21 to 22, God gives us a simple test for true prophets. "If thou say in thine heart, How shall we know the word which the Lord hath not spoken? When a prophet speaketh in the name of the Lord, if the thing follow not, nor come to pass, that is the thing which the Lord hath not spoken." While this is mainly talking about identifying false prophets, it also shows us what makes a true prophet. Their words come true. If you have this sign, you've probably also learned that you need to be very careful with what you say and how you speak. Because even casual or careless statements made when you're frustrated or jokes can accidentally release power. As a prophet, you learn that your tongue is a powerful tool that can bring blessing or cursing, life or death. Proverbs chapter 18 verse 21 says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof." For someone in the prophet's office, this power is even stronger. When you are born a prophet, your words aren't just your own. Your words become an extension of God's own declarations. God created the whole world by speaking, and he gives some of this creative power to his prophets. That's why anyone with this calling feels a huge responsibility to guard what they say. If you find your words regularly coming to pass, that's a strong sign God has put a special calling on your life. Sign 2. An unusual lifestyle marked by solitude. If God has called you to be a prophet, you'd notice that your lifestyle will probably look different from most people's, even from other believers. You will often find yourself having a deep need to be alone or reserved most of the time. True prophets, or those who carry God's deep messages, don't usually fit neatly into crowds or typical social circles. You will rarely find a true prophet who likes to hang out everywhere with just everybody, or who likes to party or associate himself with so many people. This doesn't mean prophets are antisocial or hate people. Actually, they often have a deep love and burden for God's people. But the weight of their calling, or the need to hear clearly from God, mean they need a life with less social clutter and more time in God's presence. Psalm 91 verse 1 says, "He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty." That secret place is where intimacy with God grows, where revelation comes, and where spiritual strength is renewed. Take a look at all the prophets in the Bible. They often lived very reservedly because they had to protect the integrity of their calling. They just can't be everywhere or talking carelessly. Prophets understand that their words have a huge impact exactly because they spend less time in small talk and more time soaking in God's presence. They might not talk much, but when they do speak, their words carry heaven's power. If you find yourself regularly choosing quiet prayer time over busy social gatherings, not because you're antisocial, but because you spiritually need that connection with God, that's a strong indicator. Sign 3. An unusual and early spiritual sensitivity. People destined to be prophets often pick up on spiritual things from a very young age. Before they even know what is going on, they can sense things in the spirit that others just don't notice. This isn't being emotionally sensitive. It's like having a built-in spiritual radar. As a kid, you might have felt uncomfortable in certain places without knowing why. Maybe you were drawn to spiritual conversations or felt God's presence strongly. You might have felt really uneasy around things that seemed spiritually dark, even when everyone else thought they were harmless. This is an early version of the gift of discerning spirits mentioned in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 10. Your spiritual senses, seeing, hearing, feeling in the spirit, were turned on early. Maybe you saw angels or demons as a child, or heard things in the spirit. Adults probably told you it was just your imagination, but deep down you knew it was real. Think about Samuel in the Bible. As a child, he was already sleeping near the Ark of the Covenant, a place with intense spiritual presence. God was preparing him early, just like he might have been preparing you. If you were one who started having clear visions at an early age, that would be a sign you were born a prophet. Sign 4. You have consistent and often predictive dreams and visions. Sure, everybody dreams, but if you're called to be a prophet, your dreams are different. They're unusually vivid, often symbolic, feel spiritually significant, and sometimes they even come true or give you deep insights. In Numbers chapter 12, verse 6, God says, "If there be a prophet among you, I the Lord will make myself known unto him in a vision, and will speak unto him in a dream." That's a main way God talks to his prophets. If you're born to be a prophet, this isn't just a once-in-a-while thing. Since you were young, your dreams might have been like a canvas for God to paint his messages on. You might dream about things before they happen, get warnings, or see symbolic images that later make sense when you pray about them. Look at Joseph in Genesis chapter 37. His childhood dreams caused family drama, but they were actually showing God's future plans. Daniel also had powerful dreams that shaped nations, as seen in Daniel chapters 2, 7, and 8. These aren't just regular dreams about your day or your worries. They're divine downloads that stick with you and leave you knowing they meant something important. Sign 5. You have a deep, innate burden for truth, righteousness, and justice. If you're called to be a prophet, you also carry God's heart for truth and justice. When you see lies, compromise, injustice, or sin, especially in church or religious settings, it probably bothers you way more than it seems to bother others. This isn't about being judgmental. It's about having a genuine heartache that mirrors how God feels about these things. Even when you were young, you might have been the one to question things that didn't seem right, speak up against unfairness, or feel deeply troubled by fake or hypocritical behavior. This burden can make you seem intense sometimes. Think about Elijah confronting the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel in 1 Kings chapter 18, or John the Baptist calling out King Herod in Mark chapter 6, verse 18. There's something inside you that just has to stand up for what's right. This isn't about being negative or critical. It comes from a deep love for God and his ways. You genuinely want to see God's people living purely and powerfully. This burden often drives your prayer life and shapes the messages God gives you to deliver, which sometimes include correction or calls to return to God. Sign 6. You have the ability to discern motives and spiritual atmospheres. If you're called to be a prophet, you can probably read the room spiritually. You have this natural ability to sense what's really going on in people's hearts and in spiritual environments. You can often see through fake fronts and know what's happening beneath the surface. Jesus did this perfectly. John chapter 2, verses 24 to 25 says, "But Jesus did not commit himself unto them, because he knew all men, and needed not that any should testify of man, for he knew what was in man." While none of us can know hearts like Jesus did, prophets often have a stronger dose of this discernment. You might meet someone and instantly get a check in your spirit, a warning or caution. Or sometimes you might feel a deep peace about someone. You can walk into a room or a church service and immediately sense the spiritual climate, whether it's open to God, heavy with spiritual oppression, or filled with religious pride. This isn't about judging people based on how they look or act. It's a spiritual perception that goes deeper than the surface. Look at Elisha. He knew exactly what his servant Gehazi had done behind his back in 2 Kings chapter 5. This kind of discernment helps you navigate the complicated waters of ministry and spiritual warfare. Sign 7. A solitary path and often feeling misunderstood. If you're born to be a prophet, your path is often a lonely one. From a young age, you probably felt different, like you didn't quite fit in, even at church. Your deep focus on God, your unusual spiritual experiences, and your unwillingness to compromise on truth can sometimes make others keep their distance. They just don't get you or the burdens you carry. Jeremiah felt this way too. In Jeremiah chapter 15, verse 17, he said, "I sat not in the assembly of the mockers, nor rejoiced. I sat alone because of thy hand, for thou hast filled me with indignation." This feeling of being an outsider isn't because God has rejected you, it's often because he set you apart. The prophet's calling requires deep intimacy with God, and sometimes he creates seasons of isolation to build that closeness and to protect you from influences that could water down your message. While having community is important, as a prophet, you ultimately need to care more about what God thinks than what people think. This feeling of being misunderstood can really hurt, especially when you're young, but it builds resilience, makes you rely deeply on God as your main confidant, and helps you develop a clear voice that isn't swayed by popular opinion. It's part of the refining process that shapes you into a clear channel for God's word.